format for this meeting is a film speaker meeting for prison TV to carry the message of hope and recovery to incarcerated Arizona inmates. And tonight, if you guys would please help me welcome Saad to come up. He's going to be our speaker.
How's it going, guys? My name is Saad Hasek. I'm an alcoholic and a heroin addict. My sobriety date's August 25th of 2014. I have a sponsor. His name's Les Roy. I have a home group. It's the Tuesday Night Men's Stag. I'm the SRI liaison. That's my service commitment. And I sponsor about 4 new dudes in the book this week. And the reason I tell you that is in my men's accountability group, they always talk about if you follow this recipe for recovery, if you have a home group, if you have a sponsor, if you have sponsees, you have a service commitment, it's highly unlikely that you'll ever lose your sobriety date. And from my experience, I've lost about a dozen of them in the past on self-will. I was talking to Jay when I got here. It's a trip, man. I was holding my 6-month-old son, feeding him, hugging my 8-year-old son, and leaving the house that I own and getting in the truck that I own and driving down here. And I got outside, man, and I hit my knees out there. And I got kicked out of here twice in 2011. And it's crazy, man, how much God has intervened in my life. So in 2011, I went to detox, left detox with this girl I met. I loved her. We had the same sobriety date and the same drug abuse. So I was like, this is God's will. I know what they're talking about now. And like 2 hours later, I was nodding out in cereal. Like, how did this happen? And I came to the Salvation Army, and the lady's name was Rosemary at the time. That's what it was. And they let me in on a dirty way. And they're like, we're going to give you a chance. I was like, cool. But in my socks, my tube socks, I had a bunch of heroin and Suboxone. So I got this figured out. And about 6 days in, I'm working in the warehouse, strung out still. And I'm like, dude, rehab's not working. Like, this isn't... I think it's Salvation Army's fault. And so I'm like, I gotta just stop doing this heroin probably. And I flushed the heroin downstairs, and I'm like, I'm gonna not do anything. I'm gonna take a Suboxone tomorrow. I'm gonna start kicking. And I went, got coffee at like 5:30 in the morning, smoked a cig. They pulled us in chapel, went in the warehouse, started working. I started getting dope sick, dude. I was fumbling around trying to open up the Suboxone. I ran to the little BHC station over there, asked for nail clippers, told them I needed to clip my nails real quick, ran in the bathroom, opened up the Suboxone strip and ate it. And again, boom, that relief. I was like, whew. Well, maybe I could do this. And when I gave him nail clippers back and went outside and started working for about another hour and a half, and I was like, dude, forget this, man. I walked back, I'm like, hey, I need my property, I want to go. And this dude's name was Kip, I think, and he was like, hey, man, let's talk. You should probably stay. And I was like, Kip, you look like a really nice guy, and I have no ill will toward you, but you need to get my from upstairs so I can leave, man. And he's like, okay. And he gave me my stuff, and I left. And when I left, I had a couple cartons of cigarettes, man, and there's a taxi cab driver, and he just so happened to be coming down the street. And I'm like, hey. I wave him down, I'm like, bro, I'll give you a carton of cigs if you take me to Scottsdale. And he's like, hop on in. I'm like, God's will again. And so I go to Scottsdale, and I show up at my sister's house, and I knock on the door. She's like, why aren't you in rehab? And I was like, I'm not getting sober. So it's terrible, it's awful, I don't know why you would want to do that to me. So she didn't understand like the correlation of what drugs and alcohol did for me as an alcoholic. Like when I put something into my body, I felt present. I could look the world in the eyes. I was at perfect peace and ease. I was walking hand in hand with the universe, whatever you want to quote out of the big book, every promise that came out of the big book, I experienced getting loaded. And it was that relief that I chased into the gates of insanity, almost death. So a couple weeks go by, and I call down here again, and they let me back in. Now this story's way better. So I like jump off the loading dock trying to break my arm, and and I messed up my shoulder. And I was like, "This is great, dude. They're gonna take me to the hospital. I'll get some IV drugs. I'll get a note from the doctor saying I can't work for like 3 days. I'll go upstairs and just lay low. This is gonna be great." And I get the IV drugs. I get a prescription of drugs, and I come back and I pee dirty, and I give him the note, like, no big deal, no. And he's like, "Let me talk to my boss about this." I'm like, "Cool." And like 20 minutes later, he's like, "Yeah, you gotta go." I'm like, "Oh God." Like, why? I have a doctor's note. Like, I needed the narcotics. And it's just crazy, man. The reason I tell you guys that story is because, like, in the position I am right now, like, there's no way I would do that. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no way. I've been placed in this position of neutrality where from working the 12 steps. So even like talking about it, it feels like I'm talking about a movie I've seen, and it makes my stomach hurt at the same time. And it's sad, but it's pretty funny. You know what I mean? It's like this weird cultivation of all these emotions. And so I'll give you guys my story now. And so I was born in Bosnia and Sarajevo in 1990 in the midst of the Civil War. My dad was Serbian. My mom was Bosnian Muslim. So it was literally mom's side of the family fighting my dad's side of the family. And we came here as refugees in 1993, and we had 3 places to choose from. It was either Phoenix, Arizona, St. Louis, or Chicago. And my mom said, "Where does it not snow?" And we're like, "Phoenix." The terrible part about that, it's also like 120 degrees in the summer. And so we moved here, and we ended up moving into some housing projects that a bunch of refugees were living, that they all came here from other countries. And I don't have any memories of Bosnia or anything like that, so I can't say, like, you know what I mean, there's any traumatic events. But I remember at a very young age, I was in ESL class in like kindergarten or first grade. I was in ESL class, and I was with all the kids that spoke Spanish from the neighborhood in the same class. I wasn't learning any English. I was learning more Spanish. I was like, this is confusing. And I didn't feel like I belonged, man. But like, hindsight's 20/20. I appreciated that, because when I was messing around with the Mexican runners, it made business development a lot more efficient. So grateful, man. Grateful for Pepe, grateful for ESL. And we, you know what I mean, my mom got us out of the projects. We moved into a house in Scottsdale, and then after a while we moved back to Tempe. And you know, my first experience with drinking, and this is where I'm going to qualify with you guys, is my mom went back overseas to Bosnia to go bury my grandfather. He had passed away from alcoholism. And when she was overseas, she was there for like 60 days, and my sister's 12 years older than me. And so I was in 3rd grade, so it made her like a senior in high school. So like any senior in high school, they're like actively drinking, or from what my experience was, that they're partying. And so my sister comes home one day, and she knocks on my bedroom door like, "Hey, Saad, come here. So tonight we're gonna have a party, and we're gonna have a keg, and I want you to sit on the keg and ask for $5 from all the guys, and I want you to give the girls some free cups." And I was like, perfect. Sounds like a great idea. So like a week prior, I was on my buddy Anthony's house, and we're walking by his brother Brandon's room, and he's smoking out of a bong and watching this movie, and there's boobs on the TV. And I was in like 3rd grade, so boobs were a big deal. And I'm like, "Bro, what is that?" He's like, "It's called American Pie. When he leaves, we're gonna go get it, and we're gonna watch it." And I was like, yes. And he left, dude, and we army crawled across the bedroom floor and hit the VHS, turned the TV on, saw when he had it stopped, so we knew where to rewind it to. We popped the movie out, we went, threw in the VHS in his room, and we watched those boobs. And with the boobs, there was a keg, so I'm like, oh my God. And when my sister told me that we're gonna have a kegger, I'm like, I'm gonna get laid. Like, tonight's the night. And I'm like, I call my buddy Mitchell, I'm like, bro, bring your shirt, bring that nice collared shirt, we're gonna have a party, and there's gonna be girls. And dude, they did, man, and they had a party, and the big book talked about, where I could identify the most, this laughter and chatter and people getting on with one another and having conversations, and people that usually don't mesh would mesh, and that was my experience, man. There was like the jocks and the burnout potheads and the pretty girls, and everyone's having fun and everyone's drinking. And so I'm starting to pump the keg, and I'm filling up my cup with foam, and I don't know any better, and I'm pounding foam. And then I start getting some beer, so I'm drinking beer. And this girl walks up, it's my sister's friend. She's like, do you guys want a shot of tequila? I'm like, yeah, I'll take a shot of tequila. And this is what alcoholism looked like for me, is I took that shot like I'd have been drinking my entire life. And after I took that shot, it hit my stomach, and it was one of my first spiritual experiences, man. It was amazing. It was beautiful. I remember everything about that day. And the next day, I didn't wake up smoking crack or beating my wife or going to jail. So I was like, dude, I was a product of the 90s. I'm a 90s baby, so I was raised around DARE. And they're like, if you drink underage, you're going to prison for the rest of your life. And I was like, dude, I'm like, they're wrong. Like, telling my friends, I'm like, bro, I drank last night and nothing happened. I woke up hungry. Like, I'm good. And yeah, man. And so right away, I was like, well, if they're wrong about alcohol, what else could they be wrong about? And my mom came back from overseas, and obviously, I can't. At that point, I had the power to choose whether I was going to not get loaded or get loaded. And so I didn't get loaded. And in sixth grade, my buddy Jay, I remember this vividly too, my buddy Jay, he was Jamaican, and Jay stole some weed from his parents, and Jay rolled a J. And it was just the most beautiful, poetic day ever. And we're walking to school, and Jay's like, hey, bro, you want to hit this joint? And I was like, yeah, and I started smoking it like I've been smoking my entire life. And the same feeling that we went to school was way cooler, teachers were way nicer, cookies tasted way better. And I was like, dude, this is amazing. So they're wrong about alcohol, they're wrong about weed, like they might be wrong about everything that they're telling me. And right around that time, I was like into skateboarding pretty heavily, and my buddies and I, we went to Grace Community Church, and we're trying to kickflip the seventh stair, and some lady called the cops on us. So cops come swarming in this church over some like sixth graders skateboarding, and we all got handcuffed. They found weed on us, and they brought us home, and my mom freaked out, and she grounded me, man. It was like a 3-month summer that I got grounded for. I remember at that time, it was like going to prison, man. I was like doing burpees in my bedroom. And I was writing my girlfriend a letter, and I would call my buddy Mitchell when my mom was at the grocery store. I'm like, hey, you gotta come grab this letter, because she didn't have a phone in her room. And I would pass him the letter, dude, and he would get it, and the next day he'd bring me back the letter. And dude, I was like, I will never do that again, man. This sucks. And 3 months later, we're going back to school. And I'm not even kidding you, dude. Jay's like, do you want to hit this J? I was like, yeah, let's pass that. And I smoked it. And that's where, like, I stopped caring about consequences. And I don't know if it's stop not caring about them or just not being able to differentiate what was really going to happen and what my mind told me was going to happen. And start getting stoned. And my mom got diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma back in 2002, and when I was 12 years old at the time, I didn't understand what cancer was. I didn't understand what it meant or anything like that. And the day before, 2 days before Mother's Day. It was a Friday. I came home from school and there was paramedics in my house. And they had my mom, they were bagging her and they brought her to the hospital and they saved her life. And that Sunday, it was Mother's Day, and I got to go to the hospital and we were hanging out. Brought her flowers and a card and all this stuff, and we were just hanging out. And the next morning, I'm getting ready for school. My sister calls me, and she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna come pick you up." And she sounded different, her voice. I was like, "Okay, what's going on?" She's like, "Nothing. I'm just gonna pick you up. We're gonna go see Mom." I'm like, all right. And that's weird, but fuck school. So, and she picks me up, man. We get to the hospital, and there's family there that I haven't seen in a long time, and doctors are everywhere, and like, what's going on? And they're like, your mom's not going to make it. She's going to pass away. Do you want to be there when she passes away? And I was like so confused. I'm like, bro, you're a doctor. Like, fix that. Stop that from happening, like, right now. What are you doing? And they explained it to me, and I don't think I could even understand it. So I went in the room, man. I held my mom's hand when she took her last breath, and right before she passed away, she told me that she wasn't afraid to die, but she was afraid to leave me. And that, and now being a parent, like, I couldn't even imagine, man. And what's really a trip is it was my sister and I in the room, and my mom said that there was 3 other ladies in the room that had to leave their kids that were gonna help her. And I just remember breaking down. I get goosebumps every time I talk about that, dude. And I was like, oh my God. And she passed away, man. And I remember right after she passed away, I was angry. I was relieved because I didn't have someone tell me what I could and couldn't do anymore. And I was scared. And after she passed away, my sister got custody over me, and she's 12 years older. And at that time, my brother-in-law had just gotten out of prison for the ecstasy ring that happened in Scottsdale in the 90s. And that was terrible. And I emulated this guy because I thought drug dealers were the way to go. And you could have everything in life if you just sell enough dope. And it's crazy, man. So I move in with my sister, and no one's ever home. And I'm this kid, and so I'm, having parties at my house and all these things. And we go to my friend Mike's house, and we go in Mike's room, and his mom was super cool, super sketchy, honestly. Now that I think about it, she would let us smoke weed in the house, and we're like 14, and we're smoking weed, and she, hey, Michael, do your teeth hurt? He's like, yeah, Mom, can you bring me 2 of those pills this time? She's like, yes, Michael, I'll be right back. And she came back, man. I'm like, what is she bringing? He's like, just wait. And she came back, and he opens his hand, and she puts these 2 pills in his hand. And they're these 2 blue pills, and they're 10 milligram Lortab. And we each took one. He gave it to me. I didn't even ask for it. I found out what it was after I took it. And just like everything else, so I took the pill, smoked a cigarette. I'm like, what was that? He's like, Vicodin. I was like, what's going to happen? He's like, you're just going to feel amazing. I was like, cool, I like that. And here's the sketchiest part, man. I had that same feeling, but it was so sudden and so profound that I felt like God had come down and made amends to me for taking my mom. I thought that this was the missing link in my life that everyone else had, that they felt like, and I just needed this medication to feel this way. And I was like, oh my God, dude, that was beautiful. You know what I mean? I remember everything about that day. And the next day, we woke up and I'm like, hey, we have to go steal some of those pills out of your mom's room. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, bro, we have to. And we took some more pills and started eating them and burning ourselves with cigarettes for like the next 6 hours and nodding out and just like rumbling, talking like, and that was it, man. That was a wrap. Shortly after, I'm a product of Purdue Pharmaceuticals, OxyContin 80 milligram pills. and I used to snort 80s in high school, and I had no idea what I was really doing. I remember I called my buddy. I was like, "Hey, can you get Vicodin?" And he's 10 years sober now. He's like, "No, dude, but I could get oxys." And I was like, "Well, how much is that?" He's like, $20 for an 80 milligram pill. And I was like, "It's kind of expensive." Now I know it was like dirt cheap. And I'm like, "Bro, are you like trying to tax me? Because that's not cool, dude. We're friends, man." And 4 of us threw down our lunch money. We all put in $5. And we got this 80 milligram pill. My buddy Cody throws a pill in his mouth, sucks the time release off, throws it in his shirt, wipes it off, goes to the nurse's station, steals the hose clamp. We go in the bathroom, we do this, and boom, and I'm wasted. I'm like, this is even better. Thank you, God. Thank you. And life was marvelous. You know what I mean? Life was great. And then shortly after, the pills weren't readily available like they were at that time, and all of a sudden I called my guy one day and he's like, "Yeah, man, we can't get those pills anymore." He's like, "I can get you black tar heroin." And I was like, there's these lines in the sand that I was not going to cross. I would snort the pills, but I wasn't going to smoke them, and I wasn't going to shoot them because I'm not a junkie. I'm not going to mess around with heroin because I'm trying to keep my teeth and I don't want to have track marks. I don't want to live on the street. I'm not going to do it. And he's like, "I could get heroin." I was like, "How much money do I need?" Like, everything out the window, man. He's like, $10. I was like, "Perfect. Where do I go?" We waited in the parking lot for like 4.5 hours for this guy named Ishmael. And, bro, ruthless, man. I never knew what waiting around, like patience, man. I built patience waiting for those guys. And that was it, man. I fell in love with opiates at a young age, man. I got my head split wide open, man. And I bounced in and out for a long time trying to get sober. I think I just got out of high school and I hit my first halfway house right after. And I wanted to get sober, man. But every time I would go to a meeting and hear a speaker talk, he would say he was an alcoholic because he beat his wife, or he went to prison, or he got a divorce, or lost his kids. Like, bro, I'm 18 years old. Like, obviously I'm not an alcoholic. And I kept getting loaded, man. And then finally one day, I checked into a detox center in the East Valley, and this guy named Ray Pena, man, he brought a H9, their Cocaine Anonymous H9 meeting, and he started talking about what it meant to be an alcoholic. When you don't want to get loaded, you still get loaded. And I was like, wait, what? I'm like getting goosebumps thinking about that. I was like, that's what an alcoholic is? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh my God, I'm an alcoholic. I'm like, this sucks. What? Oh, and I was like, well, what else? He's like, well, and then the disease center's in the mind, so your mind's going to tell you that you're not. And that one day you're going to be able to get loaded and not pay consequences. And literally 10 seconds before him and I were talking, I was thinking about how I'm going to leave here and get some weed and just smoke weed and do a couple pills here and there. And everything's going to be fine. I was like, oh my God, I'm doomed. Like, this is it, man. And then he described a spiritual malady, man. That feeling. When I put that substance in my body, everything is, I'm at peace. And I was like, oh my God, well, so what do I do now? And he said, you got to get a sponsor and a home group and a service commitment. And by the time he told me this laundry list of things, I was checking out the girl with the fake implants. That was on Suboxone as well, 2 tables down. And that's what I did, man. I'm a junkie, man. I got sober at a young age by the grace of God in 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'll tell you right now how I got sober. So, July of 2014, I got kicked out of Crossroads East for selling heroin. They frown upon that. You cannot sell heroin in treatment centers. It's crazy. It's crazy. They don't tell you that in the orientation packet. They aren't like, hey, by the way, after you do your chores, don't sell heroin here. Like, there's a lot of room for error. And Greg Halverson, hey, Saad, can you come to my office? Like, yeah, man, I'm watching my face, strung out, delusional. Like, they're gonna hire me, man. They're gonna give me a job, dude. I'm gonna fix this entire program. And walk, all sucked up, go down the stairs, go in his office. He's like, hey, close the door behind you. I'm like, oh, nice. He's gonna give me a big salary. And he's like, sit down. I'm like, what's up, Greg? He's like, I'm gonna give you 20 minutes to pack your stuff and get off this effing property before I call the cops on you. I was like, what? He's like, you're running game on everyone but me, man. He's like, I'm not gonna co-sign and watch you die. I was like, damn. And I was like, can I come back? He's like, go to detox and call me. I was like, okay, I'll do that. And 30 days later, I'm still shooting dope. And here's a miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. During that brief period of distribution and mediocre sobriety, my girlfriend at the time met my sponsor at the Sunday morning breakfast meeting at Crossroads East. And he walked over to her and handed her his number and said, you are going to need this phone number. Keep this number safe. And a month later, I'm tweaked out of my mind, dude. Walking around the house with a gun that I don't even know if it worked or not. And I could have sworn there was people in the bushes. And my girlfriend calls him. And she's like, Eddie, I don't know what to do with him. He's walking around. And she's like, put him on the phone. And I get on the phone. And he's like, hey, it's Eddie. I'm like, what's up? He's like, listen here. And he's like super militant. And he's like, do you want to get sober? And like my girlfriend's crying and yelling at me at the same time. I'm like almost out of dope. So I'm like, fine, yeah, I'll get sober. Whatever, dude. Like, it was burnt anyway. And he's like, you're gonna go to Banner Thunderbird. It's a great detox center. And I was like, I've only been to Salvation Army, Crossroads, and Community Bridges. So he says Banner Thunderbird Detox Center. It sounds like this marvelous facility. And I'm like, cool, dude, I don't have insurance. He's like, you have access? I was like, I've got access. He's like, you're good. And so I hang up the phone, and my girlfriend's bawling, crying. And she's like, can I take you? And I was like, yeah, we could go. And I'm putting my bag in the car, and we lived on Glendale and 12th Street. So we had to take Glendale down to 17, and my Hispanic fellow lived off of 19th Avenue in Glendale. And I told her that we needed to make one last stop. And she's like, absolutely not. And then I was like, have you seen Intervention? No one's ever gone to treatment sober. Like, why would you do that? My last time getting high. Like, come on. She's like, fine, right? Manipulate her. She says, okay. And then I'm like, hey, by the way, can I have $30? I swear to God, dude. And she gives me $30. And I run in my friend's house and my friend, whatever, and I come back in the car, and we're driving to Banner Thunderbird, man, and this is August 24th of 2014, and we get to Banner Thunderbird, and we're sitting in the car, and she's a normie. She's a nursing student, normie, never done drugs, drank every once in a while, and I'm cooking my medication and tying off with the seatbelt, and I got blood dripping down my arms because I'm so shot out, and I'm fishing for a vein, and she's crying hysterically. She's like, why are you doing this to yourself? And I'm like, shut the fuck up. And then he laughed, man, but that was it. Just shut up for 2 seconds, please. And then I got it in. And he goes, there's no way I'm gonna get sober. And I was like, I'm gonna try, but I'm just telling you right now, we should just end this now. And I go, I don't even know, man. So I get up out of the car. At some point, I overdose in the parking lot from like the car to the entrance. I get Narcan. I come to in the hospital bed in Banner Thunderbird. I'm strapped down to the bed. There's 2 security guards in the room, doctors and nurses. My girlfriend's crying. There's dogs, security dogs in there, and this doctor walks in, man, and this doctor is of Middle Eastern descent, and he has a turban on his head. And mind you, half of my family's Muslim, and this doctor comes in, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "We haven't forgotten about 9/11, you motherfucking terrorists." And it's like, and he's like, "What?" And he's like, "What are you doing in my hospital?" I've never seen a healthcare professional get so angry in my life, and rightfully so, man. And I was like, "Man, I'm a heroin addict. I'm 24 years old. I can't keep a needle on my arm, out of my arm, and I don't want to live anymore, and I can't picture life sober." And this human being did the best thing anyone's ever done for me. He put me in a 72-hour cycle for suicidal ideation. And man, talk about like feeling like you overreacted. Like I get like 8 hours later, like the Narcan's completely overpowered everything. I'm like coming to, and there's purple couches and TVs on the wall and diabetic lemonade that's super sour and stale cookies, and this lady's pacing around screaming at the walls, and I'm like, what have I done with my life, man? I'm 24 years old. Like, what is this? And I felt like I had woken up from a dream and entered a nightmare. And in 2011, when I was here at Salvation Army, I was here with a dude named Marcus Clark. And some of you guys might know him or see him around. He's pretty active down here, and he was still sober. And in 2014, I was sitting there in Banner Thunderbird, and I hear the doors pop open. I'm in my recliner, and Marcus Clark walks in. I'm like, what the fuck? And he's wearing a Community Bridges shirt, and he's dropping off a client, and he's smiling, and he's happy. He's got some new Jordans on. I'm like, dude, he's sober still. I melted in my seat, man. Like, and I called my sponsor. And he's like, why don't you call Greg Halverson and see if they'll let you back? So me being the guy I am, I called Greg's boss, which is Joe Peterson, that I was kind of friends with, man. He was like a dad to me, and I called Joe. I'm like, hey, Joe, it's Sod. He's like, what do you want, scumbag? Bro, I'm a newcomer, dude. Where's the love and tolerance? You can't talk like that. And he's like, I was like, yeah, like, can I come back to Crossroads? He's like, you stupid? You know you can't come back to Crossroads. I was like, oh, well, why? And he's like, man, if you want to get sober, you got to do it somewhere else, because I don't want to have you come to my place and you do the same thing that you always do. Fair enough, man. And I called Eddie back, and Eddie's like, ask the case manager for a list of halfway houses, man. And when we get off the phone, I want you to say a prayer. And I remember getting off the phone with Eddie and getting on my knees, and my prayer and I remember it clearly and vividly, was, help, God, will you please help a mother out? And I said this prayer, man, and then it was weird. It was like a quick one. Like, I felt a little bit better. I was like, that's weird. And then he brought me a list of halfway houses. And on the list of halfway houses, there's one called the Hope House. And in my trying to get sober, I had been to an H&I down there at the Hope House on Friday nights. This dude named Paul Bumpus and Eric Weirson used to do down there. And I was like, cool, man, I'm gonna call them. And I started calling them. They're like, cool, we don't have a bed, but if someone misses curfew tonight, there's a good chance we'll have a bed tomorrow morning. I was like, cool. And in the midst of all this happening, they moved me to Community Bridges in East Mesa, because they were out of detox beds, and I'm detoxing. I'm calling every day. I'm calling every day. And the date of my discharge, I called that morning. A guy named Jim answers the phone. He's like, you're in luck, man. Someone didn't come home for curfew last night. We got a bed. another feeling. I was like, oh my God. I called my sponsor, I told him, he's like, you better thank God. And in my mind, I was like, what's God have to do with this? I made the phone call. What are you talking about? Thank God. I'm like, whatever, man. I'm like, God, thank you. And I get to the halfway house, and I get in there, and this guy named Jerry's there, and he's like 60-something years old, and been sober like 15 years, and plays zero games. I walk in, and I sit down, and I'm like, I've learned enough AA talk and like halfway house talk to get my way into a sweet position. And I'm like, by the way, I have seizures, so I can't have a top bunk. And he's like, will you stop talking? I'm like, what? What's wrong here, man? I'm just telling you my medical history. And so you're gonna get a home group, you're gonna get a service commitment, you're gonna get a sponsor, you're gonna be here by 9 o'clock. If you're here at 9:01, I'm packing your stuff up and you're leaving this property. And I was like, okay. And I said okay, and I didn't mean it for 1 second. And then God intervened, man. Miracle bus was passing by my life, man, and it stopped right in front of me on August 25th of 2014. And for some reason, I was almost mandated to get on that bus by God, man. And through the 12 Steps to Alcoholics Anonymous and a good sponsor, and the rest is just nothing but beautiful experiences, man. I have very close friends due to this disease, and I've been able to live my life to like I could have never imagined, man. My sponsor had me write a list of things that I wanted when I got sober. It was a truck and a pretty girl. That was it. Like low. I had no hope. And thank God, God had bigger plans for me, man. So I moved into the Hope House. I got a sponsor, started working the steps. And I had a huge understanding of step one from my experience. It was like, I get high in treatment. Like, there you go, like good enough. And steps 2 and 3 were a little bit more difficult for me because we came here from the Bosnian War and all that stuff, and I wasn't really in a religion. I thought this was a religious program, and God had taken my mom at an early age. That was my perception at the time, and I forgot to mention this. I don't know how, but 7 years ago, my brother-in-law that I grew up like he was my brother, man. He got in a shootout with the cops and got killed. He was looking at the rest of his life in prison, man, and he decided he wasn't going to go back, so it just happened right there, man. And my sponsor, man, we're sitting there at the USA on 43rd Ave in Bell, and he's like, how about this? I'll let you borrow my God until you find one. I get goosebumps when I think about that, man. This dude met me exactly where I needed to be. And for the longest time, man, I would call him about everything. He was my God, man, for the first few months. And through prayer, man, I found a God of my own understanding. And we went over my inventory, man. I found my part in my mom dying. I remember the first time my sponsor said, well, what's your part? I almost felt obligated to punch him in his mouth. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, what's your part? I'm like, I don't have a part, Les. The new sponsor is Les. I don't have a part. Did you not hear this? 14, mom died, victim. And he's like, how about this, man? How do you use that to benefit you? And when he said that, I was like, we're on to something. And through enough questions, man, I discovered the truth about myself. So my part with my mom passing away was from that point forward, anytime I got into a relationship with a girl, and it was either going good or bad. If it was going good, I'd be like, I'm afraid to get close. See, my mom died. We should probably calm down. Or, other way, if I needed something from her, you're going to leave me just like my mom. Super sick. And and we got a list of my character defects, man, and we went over 6 and 7, and my sponsor showed me in the 12 and 12 what it meant to do a 6 and 7 on a daily basis. It means changing your behavior. And through changing your behavior, you change your thought life. If you're a liar, a cheater, and a thief, do the opposite. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. And it sounds very simple, man, but it takes a lot of God to make those events happen, man. And dude, we got to 8 and 9, and at this point, I was like a few months sober and happy, man. I was happy and sober at the same time. And I couldn't remember a time in my life that was ever the case. And I started making amends, man. And my sponsor took me to my brother-in-law's grave on Van Buren at 27th Ave at the cemetery. And I hadn't been there since he had passed away. And I wrote him a letter, man, about what I was doing. And in the letter, I was like, hey, I got a sponsor. It's super weird, but he's making me write this letter. So if I see you in heaven, don't think it was weird. Like, I got super honest. And he picked me up on Saturday morning, like 6:30 in the morning, man. Took me down there, and we read this letter, man. And he didn't say 2 words, dude. I sat there and cried for like an hour and a half. And after everything, man, the feeling was like, I was like, oh my God, dude. And right before he had passed away, he told me that he wasn't going to go back to prison. He wanted me to be there for his daughter, for my niece, and be a man and help raise her, because he couldn't. And all right, well, whatever that means. And that's 10, 11, and 12, man. And they taught, people say they're the maintenance steps or the growth steps. It says it very clear in the literature, man. It's where we grow in likeness with our Creator. So every day I have to ask myself, can I be more like God and less like me? And not like in this weird way or anything, man, but can I do better today? Can I do what God wants me to do? And dude, so I'll give you the highlight reel of God. At a year sober, I got a condo with my best friend Elijah. I got a job at a treatment center as an overnight tech. Happiest I'd ever been in my life. Walking around like a zombie at 3 in the morning doing bed checks on people. A year and a half sober, I got my driver's license back and bought a car and met my wife now. Year 2 sober, I adopted my niece when my sister went to prison. And I got an 8-year-old stepson that calls me dad. At year 3, I bought a house. I got married. My sponsor, Les, he actually got ordained and he married my wife and I. So like my sponsor went from answering the phone when I'd be crying about my roommate snoring to now our kids play together and we plan trips and stuff. And dude, so you want to hear something crazy, man? So 6 months ago, I had my first son. I have an 8-year-old stepson, but I had my first son, my first kid. And at Banner Thunderbird Hospital, on the same floor, opposite wings where I had overdosed. Now here's the craziest thing, man. I almost took my last breath at that hospital, and I delivered my son in that hospital and held him and watched him take his first breath. And when he opened his eyes, he has the brightest blue eyes now, man. I was looking at myself and I was like just crying hysterically, man. I was holding him and I was saying, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Thank God I didn't get what I wanted when I first got sober. I had the truck. I had everything I wanted materialistically, but I have so much more, man. I got good friends. I got friends that if they don't see me come to a meeting for a week or 2 because I'm doing some other things, they're like, hey, bro, where are you? I got a job. I've got a career. I get to help alcoholics on a day-to-day basis, man. It's so crazy to me that the last time my shadow darkened this doorway, it was full of despair and horror and nothing good, man. I just had no hope, and now when I walk in here, I'm like on the verge of tears, man. Because I sat in those seats, man, and I would hear dudes talk. I'm like, there's not a chance in hell that this is gonna work. And it does, man. And in the midst of these last 5 years, I've always had a sponsee. I've always called my sponsor. I've always had a home group, and I've always had a service commitment. I stay accountable to a handful of dudes. Jay Dow and I used to do steel on steel until one of our buddies got loaded and then it got weird. We couldn't really keep up the group anymore. And I mean, it's just it, man. AA's become my entire way of life. And, you know, if any of you guys are brand new and you don't know if this is going to work for you, man, I'm happy to tell you that it will if you put in the work. I've been overpaid for the work I put in Alcoholics Anonymous, man, tenfold. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go home tonight, hit my head on the pillow, man, and kiss my wife goodnight, and not have to make my bed in the morning if I don't want to. You know what I mean? Like, miracle, dude. The first time I left the halfway house at a year sober, I moved in with my friend Elijah. He's the godfather of my son now, and. I would pack up my hygiene in my bag and wear my sandals to the shower. And in the shower, I was like, bro, what are you doing? And I was like, what? He's like, just leave that stuff in your bathroom. And I was like, I don't, like, how do you do that? And slowly but surely, man, like I felt like this life started to be mine, man, and I didn't hijack it from someone. And I'm thankful for you guys. Thank you, Jay, for having me come in.
Yeah.